It's so wonderful to see you all at this time, having taken precious time from your families to celebrate. Nothing gets our juices up like celebration. Just look at those beautiful young people, and they're celebrating life. And it's incredible to see the energy and the love and the sense of who they are in full display. And that is what is possible in our country. And yet, we don't make enough effort to celebrate each and every one of our children. We're happy to celebrate our own and those of our neighbors, but this is real life. You know, 2018 has been a real tough year. Or let me say, the last 10 years have been tough. And it's time to take stock of what we need to celebrate. And part of it is what we've just seen, but also the work of Partners of Possibility. This evening is about giving thanks and celebrating the beautiful work that's been done in this arena. School leadership is one of the critical success factors of any nation. If you don't have school leaders you can be proud of, you can't actually build a nation. As a daughter of excellent teachers and an excellent school leader in my father, I'm very proud to be standing here today and to know that you are carrying forward the legacy of so many of those teachers. We are also here to celebrate Partners of Possibilities' long walk, walking together with so many people. We heard about my school partners, but there are many others in this hall and elsewhere in the country who have been your partners. I don't know how many of you are aware of Inglulamiti scenarios which have just been released. Interestingly, they also have settled on the metaphor of walk. And their best scenario is called Naile Walk. And of course, when I saw these young people dancing, it reminded me of the dance moves of the young people who launched those scenarios. My comments this evening are going to focus on ethical leadership in complex societies. The questions we need to ask ourselves are three. One, what is ethical leadership in education in complex societies? Second, how do we inoculate our educational enterprise against stereotype threats? And three, what is inspirational school leadership? Let's start with ethical leadership in education in complex societies. Have we ever asked ourselves deeper questions beyond the obvious ones about why our education system is underperforming its potential in this very big way? More than half of the children who start school don't finish. They drop out. I mean, which country wastes talent the way we have done so in the last 25 years? But we do so while spending more percentage, the highest percentage of our government expenditure compared to other countries, including the UK and US. goes to education for these miserable outcomes. A 2018 World Bank study on Human Capital Index ranks our country 126 out of 159 countries. The index shows that a child born in South Africa is 41% as productive when she grows up as she could have been had she gotten better education and better healthcare. A child who starts school in our country at age 4 years can expect to complete only 9.3 years. And when it comes to international tests, our students score 343 out of the possible 625 for advanced performance. We are in the mediocre, the minimum attainment around 300. How is it possible that this happens against the background of so much investment? There are studies done in the US by an African American guy called Claude Steele. Those of you who haven't read his book, I would ask you to do so. These studies have established beyond any doubt that people subjected to stereotypical comments tend to fear failure. They fear proving the stereotype right. So let's take a group of young women about to be given a test in mathematics, and the teacher says, you know what, women have a real hard time with mathematics. And then gives them the test. And then next door, the same profile of women are given the test and they are told, you know, our experience tells us that women just ace it. They ace it, they fail. And the same thing with black people. You know, black people can think in 3 dimensions. Somebody who was a UCT donor once said to my predecessor, Professor Stuart Saunders, he was so angry that he nearly hit that guy. He's a very gentle guy. But this man was a big business person. He believed that black people can't think in 3 dimensions. Now, how can you teach them engineering when that's your starting point? And of course, when you tell them that, black pupils will underperform. Now, you may think that, well, you know, what kind of people do this? What we need to understand is that we as South Africans, all of us, for 500 years, we have been saying to segments of the population, you know what, you just can't cut it. And that segment of the population so embrace the idea, or the majority of them embrace the idea. There are some who buck that trend. I mean, the likes of Oliver Tambo, who started school when he was 11, ended up becoming a top mathematician. My father, for example, grew up in a village where there was very little there, but he never stopped believing that he had a brain that God gave him and he's going to use it. And so, how does the stereotype threat work in our society? Just think about, only this last week, a school here in Cape Town, Rustenburg Primary School. Little grade 2, grade 1, grade 3 kids were saying, can black people really teach? Now, kids don't ask those questions unless their parents, the adults, are talking about this. Now, if you look at our Model C schools, so-called, which are public schools actually, paid by my taxes and my grandfather's taxes, and many other schools, there's hardly a black teacher there. And when they're there, their teaching is closer, and even that they have to teach whatever third language is close. So our reality in South Africa is a reality of ongoing stereotype threats to the majority of the population. I have many young people come and talk to me. Many they've got their CAs, their lawyers, their investors and investment officers like the young man who was here. And they tell me how every day when they walk into the workspace, they have to prove that they really deserve to be there, that they really are adding value. Can you imagine how exhausting it is? Every day you are proving that you are not the stereotypical person who's a black person who can think, can perform, can be trusted, etc. And in the end, the impact is that we have an education department led by a minister who, in the 21st century, said kids who get 30% and 40%, it's okay. It's all right. So the whole nation of South Africa has told itself that it is not worthy of excellence. And you know, it's not good to say, I can take my kids to Westerford or to Bishops, but I can teach kids in a way that produces matriculants with 30 and 40%. So I would like us to just stop and say, how can we look ourselves every day in the mirror in a country that does this to millions of young people, millions of women, millions of village people, instead of celebrating this? So you may well ask, I started by saying, you know, we are here to celebrate. So what's this got to do, what I've just said, what is this got to do with celebrating excellence? And I want to tell you everything. It's got everything to do with it. Because the excellent school leaders in here, if they stop and think about their colleagues in the schools where they are, think about the parents of the children that come to their schools, think about many of their pupils who, whatever you do, don't seem to be thriving. Ask yourself the question, isn't it time for you as an ethical, excellent leader to become an enabler of a process that might start the inoculation process? Inoculate young people against the fear of failure, against stereotype threat. So how do you inoculate an education enterprise against stereotype threat? As a medical doctor, I was taught you can't give a vaccine unless you know or even develop one. What is the bug? What is the offending bug that's causing the disease? In our case, we need to acknowledge that we are all infected by the stereotypes of the legacy of apartheid, with racism, sexism. We need to commit ourselves to creating healing circles of friends. I hope those circle of friends don't just talk about money. Yeah. you need to travel inwards and ask yourself, what is this inner person feeling like today? The reason they buy those vehicles is because there's emptiness inside here. It's more than discipline. It is a sense of self-worth. And because we don't talk about this sense of, I feel disrespected, I feel humiliated, I feel, these young professionals who come to me, they say, when you walk into the workspace in corporate South Africa today, where 70% of the CEOs are white and male, in a country where white males are a minority of minorities. How does this happen? So they say when they walk in, they have to prove that they are not guilty of incompetence. They have to prove that they really are capable of excellence. And so we need to create spaces where we can have healing conversation. Not, you are a racist or you are a... No. Who are we as a people? Can we tell one another our stories? These young people were telling us stories through dance. So your circles, before you get to the investment side, if this person inside here is okay, the rest will happen. And this is the missing piece in South Africa, that we had this fabulous political settlement. We pay zero attention to how people feel. And if people don't know how to talk about how they feel, then we have the crime that we have. We are surprised. How can anybody do that? They can. Because they've been told all their lives that they are not human, that they are not human enough, that they are not respectful enough, that they are not anything. So they can commit the crimes that are committed. Even our schools are no longer safe. Young people beat up teachers. Teachers beat up kids. And teachers impregnate students. I can't imagine what my mother and father are thinking when they see this, right? Because my father was the kind of school leader who didn't just do the leading bit in the school, but they took seriously the idea of school at the center of community. So he was the chief gardener in the place. He was the chief coach for sports. He was the choir master. He was the preacher in the local, and the go-to person when you've got a problem. So you can imagine when we grew up, there were 7 of us in the house, but almost every year we are guaranteed a new sibling from the kids that he looks at and he just sees hunger and he says, well, come and see me after school. And this child arrives. It's a new brother or sister or whatever. And this is not because we had money, but because his interpretation of ethical leadership is about you cannot turn your eyes away from someone in need when you can help. Not luxury, but just that. So as we celebrate you as excellent school leaders, I pray and hope that you will become the catalyst of difficult conversations in your schools. That you will harness life orientation, not as where you bake cookies and do stuff like that. Real, serious conversations between and amongst young people, so they can start to know who are you, where did you grow up, what makes you tick, and so on. Of course, you can't do that if the teachers themselves don't travel inside to be able to help young people to do the same journey. And that's the journey that's going to lead to healing. Many of you know that Scandinavian countries are countries where there is the most social justice, gender equality, and so on. They were not always like that. They were feudal societies until the 1800s. And they were helped by pastors who had gotten their theological education in Germany. That was before Germany fell in love with Hitler. That they were taught about the importance of getting the soul, the mind, and the body to work together in harmony with nature. When you do that, you get the best person. Whether they are farmers, or they are teachers, or they are parents, they bring out the best because they are in touch with their inner feelings. So, the question for those excellent school leaders is, what about, in addition to life orientation and working with your colleagues, also encouraging SGBs, who are representatives of the parents of your children, to create healing circles for their own personal development? Because the Rustenburg affair would never have happened if the SGB in Rustenburg had gotten its act together, right? What were they thinking in a school like that, in the middle of Cape Town, that has got no interest in having people who don't look like them teach kids in a society which is as diverse as ours? So, one of the important things about these circles of healing is where we can share our dreams. Because neuroscientists have now established that we do best, we change our behavior and our plans and our way of looking at it if we permit ourselves to dream, to see a possible different future. Which is why now what I do every day is to help South Africans to reimagine a South Africa they can live in. In Ghana, that's happened because we lost sight of the dream that so many people died fighting to make this country look like that country of our dreams. Now we need to rediscover that. And you do that in these circles of healing. When you start with dreaming, you then become quite comfortable with saying, you know what, I need to fix this and that in my life. But when you don't have a dream, you're only complaining about what's gone wrong. You can't go up. You can't see the future. And you don't have the energy. Because the dreams will transport you to that future and you'll keep your eye there. That's why I've been an activist for 50 years. I haven't lost sight of that dream. So let's look at the last question, inspirational, ethical school leadership. My father, as I've indicated, was a school leader at a school called Stephanus Hofmeyer School at the foot of the Sopansberg Mountains in Limpopo. And that's where I saw this man whose highest academic qualification was the then Standard 6. But he bought the whole series of Shakespearean plays. He had encyclopedias, so he educated himself to the level of a graduate. And he taught and made sure his students were always at the top of their game. So today, you as school leaders have got high qualifications. But what's the missing link? The missing link, in my view, is this constant focus on a dream of a country that you are preparing these kids for. So that every day you can't slack, because that dream requires very high performance. And if you keep that dream also in front of these young people, you will have absolute joy because they'll be oozing energy. And the idea of a school at the center of community means that even their parents, their siblings, the alumni of the schools where you are excellent teachers will be part of the journey. The walk together will go beyond just the partners of possibility. It will be the whole community or series of communities working together. Imagine the impact of that kind of inspirational leadership, changing the 8 Sechs of this day, the Athlons of this day, the Hanover Parks. You can't stop gangsterism by beating gangsters. You stop it by loving them. And we have not found the space to help parents of those very troubled kids to love themselves, the parents that is, love their children, and for the community to work together in this business of love. And so, I believe that we have an obligation to work together wherever we are, whether we are in the corporate sector, in the faith-based communities, in the NGO space, in schools. We need to reimagine every day when you wake up in the morning to thank God for this beautiful country and imagine what it could look like. So that day you are taking a few steps towards that dream. Do you think you're going to slack? No way, because you want to get to that dream. Now imagine inspiring young people to be like that. Imagine what our homes would look like. Imagine what our country would look like. I want to end by saying that as we celebrate the work of Partners of Possibility, let us celebrate the gifts that have been made available to us. And let us also encourage Partners of Possibility to stretch its arms beyond the known and explore linking and working together beyond what you know. You've been around, but the impact of what you do can only be felt the more you spread your connections. It is not about competition. It is about collaboration. Our country is at a crossroads. We all have to make sure that we turn our country into a high-performing country with its eye on that dream, so that our children and our children's children can be proud of the future that we will be shaping starting tonight when we leave here. And that we will continue every day. It's a dreaming day. And when we do that, there is no way we can excel. Congratulations to all of you. You are all winners. Thank you.
Wow. I think we need to give Dr. Ramphele one big round of applause. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramphele, for sharing with us this evening. I think we have lots to chew on. Really powerful stuff to chew on this evening. And the one thing that stuck with me is, and I heard it from the word go, something is possible if we dream and reimagine what South Africa could look like. But it starts with creating healing circles. What a concept in schools, to create environments where we're sharing our stories. Spaces where young people can share their stories. Teachers can share their stories. Principals can share their stories, but SGBs can share their stories. Imagine you create something like that at your school. That's a practical thing that you can do. Creating a space for people just to come and talk. And not walking behind each other, not walking ahead of each other, but holding hands. So thank you so much, and bless you for sharing with us this evening. Now, you saw that thing about Twitter up, and I hope people have been tweeting. All right, have you been sharing photographs? And so, who's that top tweeter here tonight? Tanya? Really? All right, so do you have a gift?
Second one is Rumbi Zai.
Whoa, okay. 2 gifts. All right. Gift number 1 and gift number 2. Okay. So this is number 1. Thank you. And number 2. Can you pass it up, please? Thank you. Then we have a gift for the principal that has come, that's attended like 30, 45, no. So who is that? Myrna Davids. Is she here? Myrna. It's your brother. All right. Okay. Thank you. Alright. Now, prize giving tonight, we've got one more gift for our speaker. We have a gift for our speaker. Wow, I like this. And then we have another gift for just being special, Melanie. I can tell you, Melanie is amazing. That's why just giving her flowers is appreciated. Now, one of the things that we try and do is receive your honest feedback. This is a serious part of the program where we ask you to be as critical in your feedback as possible. So we've given you a little feedback sheet and we're asking you just to write a comment, score, or a comment, or anything related. So there's a set of questions there and we really would ask you. We want to make sure that every time we do a presentation like this, we are hitting on the button. And we're not missing the mark. That we're inspiring you to consider something deeper. And so as we do this, we ask you just to give us your feedback. All right. Then one last thing, your travel. You want to just say something about that?
Me again, sorry. Firstly, please don't forget, if you did not get your parking card validated, just get it validated before you leave. It's at the registration desk. That's it. Other than that, from me, before I hand over to someone to close, thanks so much. I hope you've enjoyed your time here with us at our humble abode. The doctor, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And just so that you know, I like to feel. I'm a feeling person, right? But for everyone here, like she said, like the doc said, dream that you can achieve anything that's out there. In my life, I have, everyone else here has the same opportunity. Do it. Just dream, do it. Nothing will stop you.
Alright, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming along this evening. We see it as a privilege to connect with you in these ways. We look forward to our next engagement early in February 2019. God bless and a safe journey home. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Salvan, you won't get away with that. I want to, in front of everybody, say a massive thank you to you and the team, Charmaine, Karen, oh goodness, everyone. Because we all just show up here and have a great time, but you guys do all the hard work behind the scenes. So on behalf of the Board of Symphony of South Africa, thank you very much for the effort you put in all the time. And I know that you've done a good job tonight because I can see shining eyes. So thank you very much everyone for coming, and thank you for being part of the celebration with us. As Salvan says, we'll see you in 2019. And we've listened to what the doc said. We are going to find new and different ways for us to keep connecting and building different kinds of relationships so that we can instill the kinds of dreams that we may not have lived, but that we can have our children live into. And that's how we build our future. So God bless and good night, and thank you very much for coming.
All right, thank you. There's some food upstairs, so please.